right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of Build. My name is Ronak Chokshi. I'm from California, and apologize for the dull weather here. And I have this running joke with my Seattle colleagues when they say that it's great weather here. But hopefully all our announcements at Build are keeping you excited, and it's overly compensating for the dull weather here. I just wanted to take a moment and introduce our speakers for the session. Tobias and Yannick from ESC Technologies are here to, they've made their way all the way from Germany. And they're going to share with us their journey using Azure AI. And Faraz from MediaKind is also here with us all the way from Miami to show us a live demo of their integration of content understanding, powering use cases such as ad insertions and video analytics in the platform. All right. Satya announced this new Azure AI Foundry visual on Monday. I wanted to start with this as a wayfinding and ground us all using just the UR here. Azure AI Content Understanding is the newest of our Azure AI services, and specifically designed for use cases that require multimodal and mixed modal content analysis, using the best of the foundational models available in Azure. So we are excited to show you the progress that we have made since we launched this at Ignite last year in Chicago, and including some new things that we're introducing today, and some enhancements that we're introducing in existing features. And I'm sure you'll find all of this useful as you build your agentic AI apps. And all of these updates are going to be available in Foundry very soon. So for those of you who haven't had a chance to play around with Azure AI Content Understanding, it's a multimodal AI service. It's designed to process multimodal data, including documents, images, audio, and video, and transform all of that multimodal, mixed modal content into actionable insights. And it's been streamlining multimodal app development for our customers, and you'll hear from our customers very soon here on stage. It uses pre-built templates, which can be customized for your use case. And we're also using this opportunity to announce a new Pro mode that leverages reasoning models and enables developers like yourself to build agentic AI apps with multi-file inputs. So you'll see some really cool demos of the new Pro mode in just a few minutes. Vinod is going to show how we are enabling developers with the ability to inject multiple files and reason over all of it for your specific use cases. So that's the differentiation here. All right, but before we go into all of that, I wanted to take a moment to play a short video that one of our customers, Ramp, recorded for us. They are an all-in-one financial operations platform. They use content understanding to transform receipts, bills, multi-line invoices into structured data automatically. And they're leveraging the pre-built invoice template and experimenting with custom extraction capabilities across various document types. So let's watch the video.
Introducing Ramp, the financial operations platform that automates tedious tasks and streamlines all your spend management needs in one place. With Ramp, manual invoice entry is a thing of the past. Whether it's a bill from a vendor or a multi-line invoice, Ramp takes care of the details automatically. Ramp ingests the invoice and uses Azure AI Content Understanding to extract all the key information: amounts, vendor name, dates, and even individual line items. Ramp parses the content automatically, so our customers don't have to lift a finger. Behind the scenes, Ramp applies intelligent matching logic to connect the invoice with the appropriate purchase or department, while also suggesting memos based on the content of the invoice itself. Once approved, Ramp takes care of the rest, categorizing the spend, applying the correct accounting codes, and syncing everything to your general ledger, accurately and instantly. Ramp and Azure AI Content Understanding make invoice processing fast, accurate, and effortless.
Cool. Without further ado, I'm going to invite Vinod on the stage to walk us through everything that we are offering today, that we're announcing today in Content Understanding.
Cool.
Thank you, Vinod.
Thank you, Ronak. Hello, everyone. I'm Vinod Karpad. I am a product manager. Thank you. So we can get started with a lot of, Ronak shared with you what we're doing with content understanding, all the capabilities that exist, and how you can use it with analyzers and things like that, right? I can go into slides, but it's day 3 on Bell, so we're going to be light on slides. We're going to do more demos. What I thought might work best is if we did a quick demo to show you what some of these capabilities are, and I'll walk you through some of these examples of like the different things around content extraction, field extraction, and all of those things in the context of the demo as we're doing this, right? So I thought we'll start with a demo that is a invoice, because this is similar to what you saw on the video with Ramp, and it sort of like gives you a flavor of what the experience was for Ramp while they're building this. You'll see that I'm here in the Foundry. I'm in a project. And the first thing you'll notice is there is content understanding on the left nav. So you have content understanding in your Foundry experience that you could start with. It is alongside all the other AI Foundry capabilities like agents and things like that, and you can just use it as part of that experience. To get started, we'll go create a new task. Tasks are how you work with content understanding within the Foundry. In this case, I'm going to create a new task. We'll just name it something simple like build. And as you go through this, you'll see that there's a few options. We'll go through that right now, but we'll start with a simple single file option. The first thing you'll do is in the Foundry experience, you'll see that you have 3 things that you can do. You can define your schema, you test your analyzer, and then you build your analyzer. And that's available for you to use now as an endpoint. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to start by adding a file, right? In this case, we're adding a simple invoice, but it's the same process whether it's an audio, video, document, image, whatever you're working with. You see you have a couple of different options here to start with, right? So the document analysis template is essentially a custom template that you can start with, and you go define whatever it is that you want to do or extract from these documents that you're working with. You also have an invoice template where it has a predefined set of fields. And for those of you who have used document intelligence in the past, you know that you have an invoice pre-built model in document intelligence. And this is essentially a set of capabilities similar to that, where you have a set of fields that we've curated. We know that these are typical fields from the invoice that you're trying to extract. And those are essentially what we've optimized the model for. So as you're doing this, you can also add new fields. So this is another innovation as you think about customization. You'll see that there's an email address here that I'm trying to extract. So you can now take this email address and add it as a new field into the invoice. And now you have a customizable invoice model that you can add new fields to. So as I add that email address field, I'll also share that there's a description field that's down there that you can actually add some descriptions on, right? So when you think about what this is doing, it's essentially think about a scenario where there may be multiple email addresses on this particular document, and you really care about one particular one, right? So if you want to disambiguate between them, you can give it a little bit of a hint to say this is the particular email address, or it's described as the supplier email address or something like that, right? The next thing you'll see is you have a strongly typed set of data types that you can extract. In this case, it's an email address, it's a string, so we'll just essentially use that as the default option. But there's other options here for you to define what the data type is that you're trying to extract from the output. Finally, there's another new addition, and in this case, it's the extraction method. Typically, when you extract something, it's essentially looking for that content within the document or within the content that you're looking at. With Generate, we've now added the ability for you to generate information. So it would be things like summarize this document and generate a summary, or synthesize some inputs, some field based on a few values that you're extracting. And finally, there's Classify as an option. And with Classify, think about this as, say, you want to generate some additional metadata, like that particular line item. I might want to say, is this a line item that is hazardous or not? I can now define a classification field to say, add additional metadata on that particular line item and tell me if this is a hazardous item or not. So with classification, you're now generating additional metadata, and you can additionally expand the schema that you're generating. Finally, obviously adding fields is great, but you can also remove fields, right? So in this example, there may be fields that I really don't care about, like some of the remittance information may not be necessarily relevant for the use case that I'm trying to solve for. I can absolutely go ahead and remove those, right? And you'll see that as removing fields is going to be useful as you start looking at how you're managing costs over a period of time. So with that, I've now defined the schema. So now we move on to the next phase of that three-step process, right, which is essentially test. And so now we're running the test. We get the outputs. Hold on a second. So we get the outputs from the model, and you can see all the outputs are essentially grounded because these are all extractive fields. So they're grounded in the content of the document. As you look at them, you'll also notice that in addition to just the output, you also have a confidence score. That confidence score is great because it allows you to do what most of you are interested in, which is essentially straight-through processing. How do you process content without ensuring a human has to review everything that you do? And with confidence scores, you can now define that particular process to say, if a confidence score threshold drops below something, that's the only time you want to review a particular value. Finally, you'll see that each of these fields are obviously extracted. There's also things like line items, right? Line items is more of a complex field. It's a table. And when we talk about content extraction, tables is one of the things that you're interested in. So you'll see that we're able to extract all the line items. And also note that in addition to the values that we're extracting, we're also extracting those values with a confidence score associated with each cell. So you've gone through the process. You've essentially built your analyzer. And you can see that the email address field that we added with zero description, because it was essentially a pretty simple field, didn't need to add a description. It's now available for you to use. So you've gone through the process. You validated that the analyzer can do what you expect it to do. And the next thing you're going to do is essentially build out the analyzer. What building the analyzer does is essentially take all the work that you've done so far and converts that into a addressable REST endpoint that you can start using in your applications. So in this case, we'll just give it a name. But this is the analyzer name that you're going to create as part of this process. So with this, you've just built your first analyzer in content understanding that enables you to take any unstructured data, in this case, an invoice, and generate a schematized output that you can use as part of the overall process, right? So there's also sample code that you can go look at in terms of like how you can actually use this analyzer in your applications. But it's a REST API. Like GitHub Copilot will help you use a REST API if you need help. That's obviously one of the ways that you can do this. So I thought this was a good way for us to sort of level set on the capabilities that exist within content understanding today, as you think about where you could go start using content understanding through the different scenarios that you're working on. If you think about what it does, extraction is not what you're trying to do, right? Like, I enjoy working on this problem, but extraction is not something that each of you enjoys working on, right? What you're trying to do is really generate business value. You're trying to solve a real problem that your organization, your industry has, right? And that requires a ton of complicated processing that you need to do. So things like post-processing, validation, those are things that you can automate. But then there's also things that are somewhat complex and harder to automate. So now you need to add reasoning into this process, right? And reasoning might show up in things like, I extracted the value from the invoice. The invoice says it is, whatever, $20,000. But am I supposed to really pay $20,000 to this vendor? Is that what I had agreed to? That's a harder question. That's not essentially something that you can extract from the invoice. That is metadata in your organization that you need to be aware of and understand how you calibrate the response from the model. So there's a class of things like enriching this document or enriching the data or the content that you're reading in, linking it to additional things that you might want it linked to, and finally being able to validate the outputs as well as aggregate information across multiple content files, right? So like an insurance claim or things like that where there's multiple files that you need to work with. So as you look at some of those capabilities, those are essentially the challenges that we were looking at. And what we essentially found was there's a pattern that we can use to try to solve some of these challenges. So I'm really excited to share with you today some of the things that we've been working on. In this case, it's something we call the Pro mode. We'll take a little bit more of a detailed look into this, but let's see how you can use Pro mode as some of the capabilities in your applications that you're building. So in order to do this, we're going to switch to another demo. Here, I have a problem that I'm trying to solve in the sense that I have invoices that I need to process. We'll stay with the theme of invoices today. And I also want to additionally compare that to a purchase order, because every invoice has a purchase order that's associated with it. And here, what I'm trying to do is essentially say, I have two documents, an invoice and a purchase order. And my goal is to extract the different fields that I care about and also validate the information that's contained within those to ensure that it's the right amounts, right? So let's take a look at how we might try to solve a problem like this that involves multiple files as inputs, and we're trying to solve to get to a more meaningful answer as part of the output. So I'm in the Foundry again. We're still in content understanding, and we're going to do the same thing that we did the last time around. We're going to create a new task, right? In this time, we're going to create a task, but we're going to actually look at some of the options we glossed over the last time we started. You see you have the single file analysis, but you also have this multi-file analysis, right? Multi-file analysis allows you to bring multiple input documents into the process as inputs. And so since we have this invoice and PO, it's two documents, let's choose the multi-file analysis. You'll see that there's options like a classification model that's coming soon, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But for right now, multi-file analysis sounds like it's the thing that we want to do because we've got these two documents we want to work with. So the first thing you'll notice is the experience is a little different. We still have the same steps of building out your schema, testing your analyzer, and then building your analyzer. But the first thing you'll see is you have the option to bring in some files. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I select two different files that I want to work with. These are both PDF documents in this case. We've already know that these are an invoice and a purchase order. But once I import them, we'll take a look at them and make sure that they're actually documents that we can work with, right? So clicking on each of these documents, you'll see that this one's an invoice. It's got some data about Contoso Lifts as the vendor that's invoicing us for a set of things. And then there's an associated purchase order that goes with it that controls, or that is the sort of the guiding document for that particular invoice. OK, so now what we need to do is really say, let's go extract the schema that we care about, right? So in order to do that, I can go to the schema page and start defining the fields that I want to. But in this instance, since this is a demo, we don't want to necessarily do that. I'll point you to another new feature that we added into the AI Foundry, which is the import schema. So I've already defined a schema. I'm just going to import that. But once I import this, we'll go take a look at the fields that we're defining as part of this process. So now that I've got the schema imported, the first thing you'll notice is it's a really simple schema, just to make sure that we're sort of on the same page here. It's just got three fields: a PO number, an invoice number, and a set of line items, right? So the invoice number, obviously, we want that extracted from the invoice. The PO number, we obviously want that extracted from the PO. And the line items, we want that extracted from the line items as well. But you'll see that there's an additional field I have here, right? So in addition to the typical things like the descriptions and the item name and the quantity, I have this new field called PO match. OK, so let's double click on this. So what we're doing with the PO match is we're actually adding a new metadata property on each line item. And what we're saying is, look at each line item, and if that line item is identical in both the PO and the invoice, that's good. It's a match. If there's not a match, I want you to tell me that it's not a match, or there's a partial match, and I want you to give me the evidence, or I want you to tell me why it's not matching. What's the inconsistency between the two? So it's not just about saying hey, are these two strings equal? Are they semantically similar? Are they talking about the same thing, right? And so this is a really interesting problem now because we've added reasoning into the process of saying it's not just an extraction task anymore. It's now reasoning over the content and generating the output. So let's look at the outputs as they come out, right? So the first thing you'll see is the invoice ID is extracted from the invoice. It's exactly what we expected it to be. It's the invoice number. Similarly, the PO number is also extracted from the PO, and that's the purchase order number. So you already see the first value proposition of aggregation, right? So you're aggregating information across these two documents and generating an output. Now let's look at the output for the line items. So in the line items, you're seeing first that all the line items are extracted the way you expected, right? So we've got the 3 columns that we defined: the description, the quantity, and the price. But in addition to that, we now have this new additional fields for PO matches, right? You'll see that there's one particular line item that's flagged. And in this one particular line item, it's saying that there's a mismatch in the number of units across the PO and the invoice. So now if you go look at the documents again, you'll notice that in the PO, it's indeed incorrect, or not incorrect, but maybe the PO is correct and the invoice is incorrect. But there is indeed a mismatch between the 2 line items, right? So the invoice quantity is 2, the PO quantity is 4. So here's the first example of how you've taken the aggregation pattern, applied reasoning, and generated an output that is different from what you could have generated in the past. So this essentially allows you to now validate that the invoice is indeed accurate, not just within the construct of the invoice itself, but across the invoice and the purchase order. So this is expanding what we're doing within content understanding to not just extract the information, but aggregate and link and connect that information together, all through reasoning, and now generate this output that is something that you can work with. So if you think about what's happening now, the first change that you're seeing as part of the whole process is you have multiple inputs that you can bring in. So earlier it used to be a single document for analysis. You send us a single document, we analyze it, we generate the output, and then we forget about everything. And then you send us the next document, we analyze it, we generate the output, and then we forget about it. But now we're able to take in multiple documents and process them within a single request. The next thing the analyzer does, obviously, is working on the document to pre-process it. It does the extraction task. But as part of that extraction task, it's now adding reasoning to extract and enrich the document or enrich the content based on the schema that you've defined. And finally, it does all the post-processing around confidence scores, normalization, and things like that we need to do. And we're now generating a task-specific output that includes the extracted content as well as the fields that you needed from this document. So with Pro Mode, you now are able to take multiple input files, generate an output that includes reasoning, and produce an output that helps you solve more complex problems in your automation or agentic workflows. While this is great, it's not quite enough, right? So it solves part of your problem, but it doesn't solve all your problems. The next leg of the problem, if you think about it, is, well, I have organizational knowledge that I need to bring into the process as well, okay? And in this case, you want to bring some additional context into that analysis process to generate these outputs and reason over the content using that additional output. Let me give you an example of what this might look like. So staying with this invoice and purchase order theme, you might have a scenario where you have some contracts. Now, these contracts are essentially contracts between, let's just say, Contoso Lifts and Fabricam, which are the 2 companies we're dealing with in the invoice. And what you're trying to do is bring these contracts in as context to the analyzer to now say, while you generate this output, also look at the contracts to ensure that whatever the invoice says is indeed what we had agreed to as part of the contract, right? So we've added another layer of complexity into the process, and let's take a look at how that process plays out, right? So we're back in the Foundry experience again. We're now going to go through the flow all over again. We'll start at the very top just because this is probably the easiest way to walk through the experience. You're all pros at this now. You're all power users, so I'm not going to talk a lot about, like, hey, what's single file, what's multi-file. We know we need multi-file, right? So we're going to stay with multi-file. We're going to go ahead and now select multi-file, and we hit create. We create a new task. What are we going to do next? Hey, we've done this before. It's adding the new files, right? So let's go bring in the same files that we started with. We've got an invoice. We've got a purchase order. Let's add those in. So let's do that, and it should take us a minute to do that. So as we're doing this, we're now going to have to think about how are we extending the same process that we built the last time around. So this time, we've added the new files. It's the same set of files that we worked with. But rather than go jump into the schema definition, we're going to take a look at some of these other options that we have across the top. You'll notice that next to the schema definition, I have the option to add reference data. Reference data, again, is static information that you're bringing into the analyzers to say, take this information and use it as part of your process, but it's not something that's going to change significantly, right? It's essentially information that is not part of your input documents. It's your organizational knowledge. It's your standard operating procedures. It's your contracts. It's all these things that you want to do in a automation scenario. So I've added some reference data. I've added about 4 or 5 documents. You'll see that some of them are contracts. So this one, for example, is a contract that governs that particular invoice. But in addition to this, there's a few additional documents. So this document here describes the contract between Contoso Lifts and Fabricam, and also has some things about scope of work, payment terms, and things like that are information that is going to be useful in validating that invoice. So now that we've got a look at that invoice, let's go look at some of these other contracts. Again, some of these are relevant contracts, some of them are not relevant contracts, right? It's just intended to demonstrate to you that it's not like you have to go find that actual document to bring in. You can just give us the documents that you think are relevant, and then we'll sift through that and figure out which ones these are the ones that really matter to the task at hand. So we've looked at the documents. Let's then essentially go through the process at this point, right? So we've defined our schema. So we've not defined our schema yet. We've added the input documents. We've added some reference data. And now we're going to go through the process and say, let's go define our schema now. Again, we don't need to hand code everything. This is a demo. You don't want to see me typing on the screen. We're just going to do the simple import here, right? So we're going to import the schema. I'll walk you through the schema as it comes in. You'll notice that in addition to the 3 fields that we had the last time around, which were the invoice number, the PO number, the line items, we've now got a few additional fields. So I'm not going to focus as much on these fields because we've already looked at them. It's essentially the same set of fields around what are the line items and what are the PO matches or what are the mismatches between the PO and the line items on the invoice. Let's look at some of these more complex fields that we've set up at the bottom here, right? So the first one, we can take a look at this. This is payment terms, right? So we've got a few classes of things that we want to look for. We want to guide the analyzer to say, let's go look at some things like this, right? Payment terms, we're trying to say, list all areas of inconsistencies in the payment terms, right? Look at the invoice, look at the PO, look at the contracts, and then you define what those inconsistencies are. And you give us the evidence of where you think these inconsistencies are. We're doing the same thing with items as well. We're looking at the items. We're identifying what those inconsistencies are. And we're asking for evidence. And we're asking for it to tell us which field these inconsistencies are associated with. So it's, again, right, in this case, we're calling this evidence. You can call it what you want to. It's essentially giving it the task of saying, go find what is semantically different between these 2 things, and tell me where you think that there's any differences that we need to be aware of. So you've created your schema now. You've defined all of these things. Let's go save this, and let's run the analyzer and test it out on this sample set of documents that we've got. We've got the same invoice, the same PO number, same PO. We've got some reference data to work with. So there's the 3 things that we've added now. Once we run it, you'll see in the output the same sort of situation play out, right? Where we've got the invoice number, we've got the PO with the PO number, just as expected. We'll also click on the line items. Just take a look at that to ensure that we see the same outputs that we saw the last time around. It's still pointing at that single inconsistency between the 2, where the quantity doesn't quite seem to match. Now, let's go look at the things that we just added in that were part of this specific request. So here you'll see that it's pointing at one particular risk, which is there is a 30-day net terms on the invoice, there's 30-day net terms, and if I look at this, it says it's due on signing on the contract. So essentially, there's a risk here where you might have to prepay or pay in advance of what you needed to. The second risk that it's identifying is also another prepayment risk, right? Where the contract stipulates that there's different milestones that need to be met, and you get invoiced on those milestones. Whereas the invoice, if you look at the invoice right now, that invoice is for that full $29,900 amount. So it's not invoicing you for just the $20,000 that you were supposed to be invoiced for. You're getting invoiced for that full $29,900 right up front. Now, if you're just running invoice analysis, there was no way that you were going to catch this problem. If you were just looking at the invoice and the PO, there was no way that you were going to catch this problem. It's when you can look at all these things together is when you're actually getting to the point where you can start catching some of these issues and be more responsive and more sort of accurate in the processing of information as you're working through this, right? So you'll see that some of these things, like the payment terms, essentially caught the same issue. And you can now, as a human, you can review this information, and you can make the decision that you want to make, whether you want to go back to the vendor and talk to them and say, hey, I'm being over-invoiced. Just send me an invoice for $20,000. I'll pay that. And then you can invoice me the $9,000 or whatever the difference is after the job is done, right? So it's essentially an ability for you to now validate all of this information in a single transaction versus having to do a lot of these things manually. In the past, this would all be either the validations would probably be a automated process. The human review would be a human process that requires reasoning. And with content understanding now, we're taking all of those capabilities, bringing them in to the overall process where you can now reason over the content as it's being analyzed. So you start with multiple documents again, or multiple input content. You go through this flow where now you can start with pre-processing. You can extract and reason over the content. Do your post-processing to generate the outputs that you want, and generate the outputs which are essentially extracted content and structured outputs. But this time, you're adding in this reference data or knowledge base as you go through this process, right? So this is one of the key capabilities that we're adding into content understanding that solves a much wider variety of challenges that you need to process as you process your content. So if you look at the architecture diagram that we started with an architecture diagram that had content extraction and field extraction. And now we're adding a new reasoning capability or multi-file input process capability. Now, as you think about some of the things that you're looking at, when we defined this in the Foundry, we never said promote in anything. We just said multi-file input, right? And so that's one of the things that we intentionally did to ensure that the process of going through the experience in the Foundry has the minimum amount of overhead for you. Right? So you don't really think about pro mode or standard mode or any mode. What you're really focused on is ensuring that content understanding can solve the problem that you're trying to solve. Right? So as you think about it, it's a simple transition to say it's multi-file input. I use a knowledge base, and I generate the output that I want. I'm using reasoning as part of this process, and I can generate the output. So when you look at this, you'll see that there's a single pattern that we see, just one pattern where you're taking multi-file inputs, a knowledge base, and reasoning. And when you take this pattern and apply it, you can apply it to a variety of different scenarios, right? So whether you look at tax or compliance, whether you look at mortgage underwriting, or whether you look at contract management, these are just a few examples: audit and tax, healthcare records management. You can think of a variety of different scenarios where each of these things is now available for you to use. This capability is available to use in a variety of different ways to target a variety of different scenarios, right? So I think it's super interesting. I'd love to see you try it out and give us some feedback on this. But that's one of the new additions that we're adding into content understanding today. There's more to come. I'll share with you a few other things that we're adding in content understanding as well. But before I do want you to hear from customers directly who are using content understanding today in order to build their applications and their multimodal applications. And in order to do that, I'm going to invite Yannick and Tobias on stage to talk about what they're working on with ASC to build their applications for compliance.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Great to be here at Build on stage. And what we want to show you today from ASC is how we implemented Azure Content Understanding and also Azure AI in our product, Recording Insights. So you might ask, what is ASC actually doing? ASC is enabling our customers to meet their compliance requirements, offer an improved customer experience, and protect people and property by providing omni-channel recording and an AI-driven analytics. So to summarize, we are the experts in recording and analyzing communications. We are headquartered in Germany, but we have a lot of subsidiaries all around the globe, and we sell and support our products through many partners in over 50 countries worldwide. So just to show very shortly the strong partnership with ASC and Microsoft. 2018, we started when Microsoft selected us as TAP partner for the new compliance recording for Microsoft Teams. And in this year, we built a new Teams app totally from scratch and deployed everything in Azure. And this gave us the chance to easily add new features for Microsoft, like, for example, we are certified for the Microsoft Cloud for financial services. We added OpenAI use cases already early 2024. We implemented a Copilot integration. And now we integrated with a new multimodal content understanding Azure service. So let's see on the next page the main problems of our customers. If you think about without AI, today the compliance teams have to manually monitor all the conversations. And they can do only 3% of all the communication, leaving 97% compliance risk. And for financial institutes, this can be quite high fines they have to pay. And they have zero business insights. With applying OpenAI, we can now automatically monitor 100% of all communication. And as a result, there's no compliance risk anymore. And the customers get much more customer and product insights. And now let us switch to the demo. We have a live demo of our live application, as content understanding is already in our product for controlled availability, so private preview. And we did some easy to understand use case. Compliance use cases are a little bit difficult. So Yannick plays the role as a customer. We pre-recorded this meeting before this call. And you have to refresh a little bit, and then you will get it. And what you will see is that Yannick is playing the role as a customer, calling a flight agency. And I'm the agent at this travel agency. And he's asking for some options for flights from Frankfurt to Seattle. And you can imagine if you do it with audio, it's quite difficult for me as an agent to transport all these informations like flight times and prices and add-on options. And if you see this, it's looking quite good. You get a speaker recognition. You get all the data. He decides to take Lufthansa because it's a direct flight. And we added some flight insurance options. So he is also deciding to take a flight insurance. And now, Yannick, just show us what content understanding can do with it. And be aware, this is already content understanding. So content understanding is transforming the raw audio into a great transcript already.
Yeah, so now let's have a look what content understanding is actually able to extract from this conversation. So we can also see a lot of fields here that we have extracted with content understanding. I want to group these into 3 areas. The first area is something like the sentiment, topics that were handled during the conversation, and a compact summary of the entire conversation, which is very useful to get back into use cases, maybe if the customer calls again, or if you're a supervisor who has to look into this conversation. The second section that I want to get in are informations about the customer itself, about persons that were mentioned in this call with first names, last names, their roles, and birth dates. Also credit card informations that were mentioned during the conversation, and any addresses that were mentioned in the conversation, very important for almost every financial use case where you maybe have to create invoices or write letters to your customers, maybe with an offer, so you can swiftly copy out the email address and so on. And like we said, we also had this additional insurance use case where you selected a package for insurance, which is, there it is. The insurance package is extracted that the customer selected, and also the bonus options that the customer selected along with its insurance is also collected here. Now, having all of this here as a one-stop shop solution is really great, but we actually went a little bit further with that.
Exactly, because now imagine we have hundreds of calls in a travel agency, and we have to see if there is an insurance option booked. Then we have to inform the insurance company about it. So we build an agentic AI workflow to say, okay, we scan all these easy extracted data, and if there is an insurance mentioned that the customer is buying this, then we can send as an easiest workflow just an email to the insurance company with all this included. So you see, this is working out of the box. We have also workflows to trigger Dynamics workflows, so workflows in Dynamics, and we are working on some other workflows with agentic AI. So this is really great. Thanks, Yannick. Now, Yannick, what is, can you show me how easy the configuration is in Recording Insights?
Well, most certainly. We split the configuration into 2 parts, and we completely integrated those into Recording Insights. So you don't have to deal with content understanding directly, you only deal with RI. The first thing you got to do is create all the fields that you want to have in your policy in this very easy interface. We already provide a number of default use cases, and we're still expanding the list. But if you cannot find a field that suits your specific needs, you can always create new fields, and it's as easy as choosing a name and a description for what you want the field to be to create a custom field. Once you have created all the fields that you want, you can simply create a new policy. In this policy, you can give it a name, and then you can just select all the fields that you want this policy to have from the fields you previously selected. For the power users, you can also upload a JSON field schema directly. That one gives you a little bit more freedom, but it is a little bit more complex. Then you can select the recording channels you want to apply this analytics to. And as you can see, we have a few here, like chat, voice, screen share, and of course, email. In case of voice, you also have to select the transcription language that you want the transcription to be in. And then you can just save it. And once you save it, RI will automatically create the analyzer templates in the background, register these with content understanding, so you don't have to do anything with the REST interface if you are a customer that is not too familiar with code specifically. And then you can just go and assign these policies to individual users to have that analysis run for these users, and this giving you the ability to dynamically extract always the fields that you actually want to have for your specific department or individual users.
Great, Yannick. Okay, let's switch to from the benefits the customer has to the benefits for ASC. This is our high architecture diagram in one Azure Geo. Sure, we have this in each Azure Geo. And if we now look only at analytics, you will see before using content understanding, we had to work with 6 different OpenAI services to get not the same result, but nearly the same. And now the big advantage for us is we have one service, and we are getting more than before of results. And this is really a huge step for us. And to summarize, we have now an AI-powered analysis of all MS365 communication, including emails. The results are 5 times faster now. We have a clear view on cost because you have just one cost unit in the end for this service. We have 30% less R&D effort because we have to work with less services. And we have implemented a few new agentic AI workflows, as I showed you. And now coming back to my strong partnership with Microsoft, by fully relying on Microsoft Azure and our product, Recording Insights, we can quickly implement new AI customer use cases and maintain our competitive edge, as we could close the gap between us and the competition with OpenAI in only 2 years. So there's much more to come from us. With this statement, thanks to everybody, and back to Vinod.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yannick, and thank you, Tobias, for sharing your journey with Azure AI. I'm going to go back to the slides, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other updates that we're working on. Now, as you think about content understanding, it's not just the pro mode, it's not just capabilities with reasoning. We've been working on a number of other updates, essentially closing the gap. Think about it as just laser focused on removing the friction and closing the gap, right? For those of you who've been document intelligence customers in the past, you're familiar with all of the capabilities within document intelligence, and we're continuing to add some of these capabilities into content understanding as well. Content understanding is really focused on using large language models with all of your content, and we're trying to build those scenarios out completely for you in content understanding as well. So we now support new document types that you can bring in when you're looking at documents. Yannick and Tobias mentioned emails. For example, you can work with emails directly now. You can also work with Word documents, Excel, PowerPoints, and all these document types for all the tasks that you want to work on. When you talk about pre-processing, classification is a common challenge, right? You need to identify. So for example, you get a single scan document that has 50 documents within it, right? So it's a loan application that contains all of the documents that are part of that loan package. You need to find what the different documents are within each of these, classify the different pages, make sure you put these documents together, and then send them to the appropriate downstream analysis. You can do that in one single API call now with content understanding. We're also adding additional updates to, for example, within layout, one of the common asks was, do you support multi-page tables? Well, now we do. We support multi-page tables. We also support the ability for you to extract tables from Excel files. And finally, as you look at field extraction, there's a variety of different updates. Most importantly, selection marks. So you can check the box now on selection marks, and you can say that you can actually extract selection marks as part of your outputs within documents in content understanding. We're also adding, I showed you the pre-built invoice model. We looked at how you could use that. We're continuing to add multiple pre-builds as we go along. And finally, we've got updates to conference scores, as well as the generative and classification fields that we looked at. Similarly, we're making progress in different dimensions, video being another one. We're adding a new pre-built analyzer that's really focused on generating an output for multimodal RAG. So you can take in a video, generate an output, push that into your multimodal database, whether it's search or other systems, and now you can build a multimodal RAG solution. Earlier, we used to have simple segmentation within a video. Now we're able to support a whole video field for things like dynamic ad insertion and things like that. We're also able to do dynamic chaptering and segmentation. And finally, we're adding the ability for you to add face detection and face recognition, right? So you can give us a database of known faces, and we can identify who they are in the videos that you're playing. We're also doing some performance improvements. You'll see that video processing is significantly faster. So here's another quick demo of how you can use content understanding, the video capabilities within content understanding, to work with, say, a data set of product issues videos, and you're trying to generate a multimodal RAG database where you're able to now answer some questions that your customers have about this, right? So as I play this video, you'll notice that I can extract all the different things that I want, including like troubleshooting tips. So I can get step-by-step guidelines out of the video, and I can use that as part of my overall solution that I build, where anytime a customer asks a question, Need
help redeeming a code on your Xbox? Follow these quick steps.
So
Press the X.
as an example, we have this Xbox video. We can now convert that into all the different steps that went through the code redemption process. And now this information is available for you to add into your search
Today, we're going to be
data
disassembling the
source.
new Surface Laptop 7th
Similarly,
edition
I have
for
another
business,
video
and I'll be highlighting the repairability features on one of our most repairable Surface devices.
So you can see that it's a Surface Laptop. We identified the product that's associated with. These are common challenges, right? Sometimes you don't know which products are associated with it in the video. Now you're just able to generate this metadata, put that into your index, and you can generate a multimodal RAG solution on top of any content, whether it's audio, video, documents, whatever that is, right? So content understanding essentially allows you to build each of these different applications, whether this is single or multimodal, right? And in order to show you how one of our biggest customers is using video in their scenarios, I want to invite Feras to come on stage and talk to us a little bit about what they're doing with MediaKind.
Thank you, Vinod. Hi, everyone. Hey, everyone. I'm Feras Siam, and I lead solutions engineering at MediaKind, a global leader transforming the way the world connects with video. Imagine a world where the next generation of TV is frictionless, immersive, and curated just for you. At MediaKind, we are building that future one pixel at a time. Every single day, over 2 billion people across the planet experience television and video powered by MediaKind technologies. That's nearly 1 in every 4 people on the planet, streaming, watching, and connecting through our software. At that scale, we don't just follow trends in media, we set them. Enter MK.io, our cloud-native, developer-friendly, API-driven SaaS platform that supercharges video and streaming at an unprecedented scale and speed, delivering rich, dynamic, and truly memorable video experiences straight to your favorite device. If you want to launch the next video competitor, Netflix competitor, we are your dude. From video compression and packaging to content protection, ad insertion, player SDK, and more, MK.io powers the entire video delivery chain, literally everything. And today, I'll show you how we've taken MK.io even further by integrating Microsoft Azure AI Content Understanding, enabling truly hyper-personalized video experiences. And this is where the MK.io AI pipeline comes in, an intelligent engine for video workflows. As content flows through, the pipeline analyzes and enriches every second, from automatically detecting important moments to generating accurate speech transcripts and translating commentary for global audiences, to creating rich metadata for better search and recommendations, to tagging scenes and chapters, to powering accessibility with real-time captions and subtitles. And this is just the start. By combining these capabilities, we transform every frame into discoverable, personalized, and accessible content across any platform or languages. Now, sports content is exploding, right? Generating huge volumes of live and on-demand content every minute. Fans today face a deluge of sports content, from live matches to on-demand replays. There's simply too much to watch. But at the same time, a sports match isn't just one story. It is thousands of stories unfolding in real time. Goals, fouls, key plays, crowd reactions, etc. At the same time, attention spans is shorter. Fans want more than just the full match to watch. They want quick access to their favorite moments, personalized to their teams, players, or specific types of play. The challenge is how to deliver that at scale to help each fan discover the moments they care about without drowning in hours of footage. However, traditional workflows rely heavily on manual tagging and editing, often requires hours or even days to generate highlights. Scaling to millions of fans individually is nearly impossible without intelligent automation. And our mission, deliver each fan their perfect reel. And this is where our partnership with Microsoft shines. By embedding Azure AI Content Understanding capabilities directly into the MK.io AI pipeline, we unlock deep scene-level insights. Azure AI Content Understanding bridges the semantic gap, recognizing events, players, scores, crowd reactions, and even the emotional pulse of the game. Content Understanding automates event detection, so we know exactly when goals, fouls, or pivotal plays happen. The pipeline then tags scenes and enriches video metadata, making every moment discoverable and actionable. This AI-driven metadata is the foundation of our hyper-personalized highlight generation, enabling us to deliver highly relevant content at scale in near real time. The integration is seamless, scalable, and opens up new layers of automation and intelligence for our content teams. And the impact of integrating content understanding is tangible. Our AI pipeline accelerates highlight reel production by up to 80%, cutting manual processing from hours to just minutes. Fans receive highlights tailored to their favorite teams, players, or play types, delivered seconds after the live action. This hyper-personalization not only drives increased engagements and longer viewing sessions, but also unlocks new revenue streams through dynamic insertion of targeted, personalized ads. Azure AI Content Understanding is the key enabler, making this speed, scale, and quality possible. Let's see it in action. Yep. Yep. So as content flows through, so as the game unfolds, our pipeline detects peak actions and crowd excitement. It identifies star players and pivotal moments, goals, assists, key plays, packages them into highlights and highlight reels, uniquely tailored for each fan's preferences. For example, in this game, I'm going to ask GPT to show me all the highlights for Real Madrid. It did. So it showed me all the highlights. I'm going to add all the highlights to create a reel, a highlight reel, just for myself. So my preference was Real Madrid, so I'm just playing that, and here we go. Of course, this enables customization, like this bumper video, then moves into the highlights and plays each individual highlight curated for my preference and my team of preference. Then inserts personalized ads, like a 2-second ad, enabling monetization and driving more revenue. And all this happens in near real time. Fans receive their personalized best of the match experience just seconds after the action. Let's probably scroll through so we can see there's a personalized ad between the two highlights, for example. And there are many other things. We can ask Copilot for different things, like highlights of Mbappe. That's my player. So I would add that. And that created a reel of multiple highlights for my favorite player. Cool. So with that, I go back to Vinod. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Faraz. Thank you so much. OK, so I had a couple of things that I wanted to share with you. We're making some updates to pricing. There's some changes coming all in the good direction for each of you that wants to know. But more importantly, I wanted to leave you with a little bit of a task. So as you go back, the first thing that you're going to do next week is create an expense report, right? And as you think about the work that we did today in the pro mode, I want you to think about what that might look like for you to put an expense report together with all the receipts from all the flights, the trains, the dinners, everything else. You've got all these receipts, some of that aggregation, putting that thing together into a unified schema of an expense report. If you have some ideas about that, if you try it out, let us know. There's a contact us email on the slide, but there's also other resources as well that you can look at as you think about what feedback you have for us, as well as any ideas of how you think you could use content understanding in your future. So thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of Bell.